Josh, welcome back to the show, man.
Cable, always a good time to meet up with you, man, especially when we can talk turkeys.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like, there's this little lull. Not I wouldn't say it's so much for Texans because we have so much hog hunting culture here. Then we have massive predator hunting contests going on in February and stuff, but I'd say for most folks, there's that lull between like January and March or April or whenever it is that their respective turkey season kicks off, right? So it's kind of in that downtime. It's a good time to catch a big bass, though. Um, but it's like that the first thing of 2025 that really gets me amped up is when you sit down in the woods that first time, whether it's opening day or 2 weeks into the season, but you hear that first gobble off the roost, and you're like, oh man, it just makes the hair on your arm stand up, and it's go time. And it's almost here, so yeah, super stoked about that. Uh, where are you at again?
So I'm up in Minnesota. So pretty much I've been buying my time before turkey season, just doing a little ice fishing.
There you
But
go.
I get heavy into e-scouting and mapping out my season and pretty much anything that will connect me to turkey hunting. Right after Christmas, I start on that maniacal trail, and actually, yesterday I spent the afternoon. Yesterday was Sunday. Spent the afternoon out doing my annual door knocking over on the Wisconsin side. So I
Oh yeah.
had, yeah, that's something me and my brother started a number of years ago, and so we've kind of built this little empire. But it's tough because a lot of places you got to get annual renewals, so it's a grind every year we get out there, and usually we'll start with our like A class renewals. And then we'll put together a roadmap for every time we get out there and we're doing our knocking. So we'll hit renewals, we'll hit new prospects and all that. And um, yesterday I got my renewal for the first season that I'll hunt, which was a relief. And then I got a new property that looks real juicy that I saw some strutters on at the end of May last year. They were out there every day.
Uh huh.
And I don't know why I just didn't knock last year because the dude was super cool. It was just old guy, probably in his high 70s, low 80s with a big old beard and comes out of his shack. And I gave him some venison and he said I can turkey hunt. So it's all good.
Okay, so there's the old bartering system.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I mean, I know you're knocking and you're not paying for these places.
Right.
Do you always take something like to offer, or like how does that usually play out?
Honestly, man, usually what I do is this is the first year I've brought anything
Mm-hmm.
for the initial handshake. And it's just because I ended up having a bunch of venison processed into sausage, which normally I don't do. I usually do all my own processing, and every once in a while, every 3 years or something, I might do some sausage, but usually I just do steaks and ground and then cook it like that. But I had a deer process this year, so I was like, man, that'd be good to bring along as a token of my appreciation. So, um, but no, to answer your question, normally, um, the gift will come after the permission, after the season. So I'll go hunt, and then usually I'll come back either early summer, right after season, or I'll wait till the winter, like right now, when it's time to renew, and then I'll go back and always try to take care of people, whether it be gift cards or venison or whatever it might be. A lot of people, I know I'm not paying cash for this stuff, but a lot of people don't really realize that, like, we talk about how public land is free and all this stuff. Well, nothing's free. So
Yeah,
whether you're on private land or public land, like, there's a lot of cost that goes into that. So
yeah.
I don't like to take that for granted, even if it's just a small gesture.
Hmm. Well, and one of the things I wanted to mention was, and I mean, you've hit on it already, is that people aren't very seldomly are they going to be like, yeah, you can hunt my place for deer for free, right? By knocking on doors. Turkeys, you're gonna have more luck doing that.
Oh
And
yeah.
dude, I've had turkey specific leases where the deer hunters that were on the lease were like, we don't care about turkeys. You can sublease it for $500. We don't care. It helps
Yeah,
us pay our feed bill. And I was happy to do
exactly.
it. Right? I love turkey hunting. Um, And then other times it's like they're even like, man, I don't care about these turkeys. You can just come hunt them. Like, when is the season? And they're like hardcore deer hunters, and like, I don't give a crap about any turkeys. They live over there. If you want to go mess with them, like
It's
couldn't
funny, man.
couldn't care less. But you can get turkey property, a lot uh, more easily than good deer property for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that goes for anywhere in the country, but like up here, for instance, I could tell you
Maybe not
that.
Florida.
Yeah, yeah, maybe not Florida. Well, I think it'd still be easier in Florida. I think it's easier to get turkeys than deer anywhere. But yeah,
Yeah.
Florida, that's a different world altogether. But
Uh-huh.
um, no, the interesting thing is like if I get access here on, let's say, 120 acres of turkey property, which I'd say is probably about average for the type of permission I get, because
Mm-hmm.
everything's 40-acre parcels up here, and so people will own multipliers of 40. So they might own 40 or 80 or 200 or 400 or whatever. Most properties are in that 120 is kind of the average. So if I get on a 120-acre permission property for turkey hunting, that same property might cost $8,000 to $10,000 for a deer lease.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's I'm glad there's still a lot of people who don't have interest in turkeys.
Mm-hmm.
Selfish.
We just lost our main Texas deer lease. There was like 13 of us on there, and I'd been on that place for 3 seasons. Shot two longbeards out there last year. Not There's probably like 3 or 4 of us that really are into turkey hunting. The other guys, again, just deer hunters. Um, but the matriarch turned 95, the grandmother, and the grandkids are like, "Hey, you're living too long. We want our money. Time to sell." Like, shouldn't you already be dead by now? Like, and you know how it goes, right? Like
Yeah.
they're gonna sell it. It might get all broken up. It's about 4,000 acres. And I don't. It's their property. I don't have any claim to it. It sucks we lost our lease, but um, yeah, it's one of those deals though where you mentioned $8,000 to $10,000 for a deer lease. So all of us were trying to keep our core group together, and we were paying $3,000 a gun. And dude, I'm scouring. I've got kind of uh, used this platform to. There's this place called Hunting Lease Locator,
Yep.
subscription based, whatever. They gave me a free deal, right? So I'm looking every day, and I'm trying to tell these guys, look, the days of us paying $3,000 a gun for the area that we were in, like, you just go ahead and say double that, right? If we all want to stay together and not be wedged in like sardines. So the price keeps going up and up and up, and that's not a great thing. But
No,
as long as we're
man.
willing to pay it, supply and demand. I don't know what the answer is to that, but but you mentioned public land earlier. That's no different. Now it's $1,000 for an elk tag in Montana or Wyoming now, when it used to be 600, right? Like, or 500,
Yeah.
and it went to 800. Now it's 1,000, and so whether you hunt private or public, the price keeps going up, regardless.
Yeah, going up exponentially too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it's certainly it's becoming prohibitive for a lot of people. Um, it's no different than what's going on or has been going on in the rest of our market. I mean, literally, my lady ran to the store yesterday, and I'm like, "Hey, make sure to grab me some eggs for the week." And there were none in stock. That's actually that place I go. That's never happened before. So she's like, "I knew you weren't going to believe me." So she starts FaceTiming me yesterday,
Mm.
and I'm like, "Okay, whatever." I answer, and the camera's pointed at the egg shelves. Everything's gone. And she's like, I knew you wouldn't believe me that there weren't anything, so I had to show you. I'm like, man,
Yeah.
times are strange. But yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely pouring over into the hunting side. And I know that most of the data still suggests that there are not more hunters, but I think everybody can agree that while there might not be more hunters, there are more effective hunters. And there are people who have the tools at their disposal now to more effectively hunt public land. And I mean, HuntStand's part of that, obviously. It's
Right.
if you want to if you want to say there's a downside to mapping apps, some people might say that's part of it. But it also helps spread out that distribution. So people are able to get into spots that they probably never even did before. So there's some give and take.
Oh yeah. And you know, when I first started elk hunting, I had a paper map of the Carson National Forest in New Mexico, which covers multiple units, right? And that's what I, that's where I was making my notes, and that's how, like, I wasn't Google Earth scouting or certainly using HuntStand or any of our competitors, right? Now I don't even take that map. Like, I don't need
Yeah.
it. It's obsolete.
Yeah.
It's all right there on your phone or your GPS or whatever it is you're using. Um, really, the biggest challenge is just making sure you have enough battery life on your phone to utilize it for the entire
Right.
hunt. So, and then now there's a whole market of external battery packs for that, right?
I was smirking when you were saying that because I have all my external battery packs sitting over here with about 600 chargers on this shelf over to my right.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
have a
it's
system. All the ones on the shelf need to be charged, and all the ones I set on the ground are ready to go.
hmm But I mean, I remember going to the Forest Service office there, picking up my map as I'm going into my first archery elk hunt. And I had hunted in there before, but for grouse and like done backpacking. But that was the first like Western big game tag that I drew. And I remember like, oh, first I got to find out where the office is. Then I got to find out, make sure they're open. Then I can time my arrival. Then I got to get the map and figure out where I want to go hunting. It was just all that. Yes, you said we've become more effective, and I don't ever want to go back. I wouldn't want to go back to those days. It's so much easier now.
Well,
And
and for me, like the whole e-scouting thing, it's not just about making yourself more effective for when you're actually out there on the ground. For me, it's like I said before with the turkey season, like I'm chomping at the bit up here after Christmas, having to wait 3 months for any season to open, and so it just helps me add to the experience. That's why I
mm,
started running a lot of trail cameras or I keep them running after deer season into turkey season now because I geek out on watching turkeys on my trail cameras. Just so I'll e-scout, I'll check my cameras every day, and like last year it was, or last week it was like a moment I was waiting for, that I was just waiting, excited to be coming, was I was like, man, when am I going to get my first strutter on camera for
mm,
the um and up here we always have like at least one fake spring that we call it. So we'll get like a warm period, all the snow will melt, all the animals start coming out, songbirds, everything starts going, turkeys get a little bit in the mood. So we had a fake spring last week. Um, Finally got a strutter on camera, and then we
mm.
had a blizzard with 14 inches of snow at 50-mile winds, and they went from just all freaking full bore strutting, fighting, gobbling, doing the whole deal, to just folding back up and lurking around with each other, just trying to make a living.
Yeah, yeah. I got my first strutter on the 27th of February, and we had a warm up as well. Got up to like 80 degrees. And you know how I saw that strutter though? It was cool because I had a couple hens come to my feeder,
Yep.
and the revolver, the stealth cam, it's got 6 detection zones. Well,
Yep.
the strutter did not come to the feeder. He was off to the side, no interest in coming in. Not, I mean, turkeys will come in. I don't know why he didn't, but I caught him strutting over there. Never would have picked that turkey up if it
Yeah.
wasn't for that camera. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that 360 is huge for turkeys. It's funny because, Will Cooper on our team, he's kind of down from your neck of the woods, and
Good friend, yeah.
it must have been right around, you said February 28th. It was right around that he started sending me pictures from his revolvers of the first strutters that he was seeing. So,
Yeah.
and they're so synced up, with the weather and the light cycle and stuff. It's pretty amazing. But
Mm-hmm.
it's funny up here because it's like, yeah, the days are getting longer, but it's still a ways off from that photo period where they're really going to start to feel it. But as soon as we get some of those first warm days, it still triggers something in them just to kind of get them, knock the dust off a little bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, so where all are you planning on hunting this spring?
We're gonna kick it off next week, or sorry, this week. this Thursday actually, down in Florida, down in South Florida. So we're gonna be down there filming a HuntStand original film with Paul Butsky. He's a legend in the turkey hunting community. So we're kind of shooting, I guess you want to call like a documentary about Paul. So he's going to be down there with us. Um, and then from there, I'll go to Nebraska at the end of March, and then it's wide open from there. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Tennessee,
Hmm.
Pennsylvania, and then I got a buddy who started working out in Bozeman. He's from Minnesota, but he goes out and he'll work for a week or two at a time at his family's business out in Bozeman, and so he's been doing some scouting out there, and he might suck me in sometime in May to go out to Montana to try to knock that down. But we'll see if I have a free weekend for that.
Well, see if you can wedge in a BHA pint night while you're there.
Oh boy. I'm sure there'll be one going on.
Yeah.
They might
Um,
they might fly you out there VIP.
yeah. Oh, yeah. They love me. Yeah, it's mutual. Well, they don't like being taken to task, but it is what it is. So, digital scouting for turkey versus deer, some of it's going to be the same, right? I mean, you find open areas, especially if there's crops, right? Well, of course, you're gonna find deer and turkey in the same place, but they don't, where a deer beds is not necessarily where a turkey's going to roost. So there are substantial differences there. And I was telling you, I got this new property in Tennessee. It's a older guy. He just runs cows on it. He's actually the commissioner of this fantasy football league. My college buddy and I have been in for a long time, and he moved out to the country and bought his little farm to retire. And his wife hated it, so she moved back to the city. So they just see each other on the weekend. He's like, I got my thing going on here in the country where I want to be. She's a city girl. They're in their 60s. He's like, it works out great. I was like, that's kind of an interesting dynamic, but whatever. So he was like, hey, I got turkeys. He's not a hunter. He's like, come up here and hunt them. And so he's been telling me for 3 years, and I'm like, okay, fine, Roland. I'm coming. I'm coming. If you're not full of crap, and he was like, man, he's like, I don't even where the cows, unless the cows are on that part of the property, I don't even know what's on my property. But I know there's like 3 different flocks of turkeys, and yeah, if there's probably 60 or 70 on the property. You're welcome to them.
Heck
So we're
yeah,
gonna go
man.
up there. So I've been using HuntStand to try to figure out, well, this is where, because he doesn't know where they roost. I was like, I bet you this is, these hardwoods next to this creek. This is where I'm going to focus my attention. So what do you do when you? I mean, I kind of just told you what I would do, but
Yeah.
what would you do if you're number one trying to find? Say you've got 4 or 5 different properties in an area, and you're like, I want to target this landowner first. So I'm going to go knocking on doors. This is the one. This is the silver tuner, as the guy said, was it Home Alone. This is the one, the McAllister's house. Which one are you looking for primarily, like, and why? What features? And then once you get a property, how are you using e-scouting to come up with a plan to put a tag on a gobbler?
Yeah, man. For me, it's a multi-pronged process, and obviously you can take it as deep as you want to go. I mean, at the base level, you nailed it. Like the single biggest limiting factor for whether there's going to be an area that can sustain turkeys is always going to be water. It doesn't matter where you are in the country. Um, they need they need a water source that's consistent. So if you can't find that, um, I mean, yeah, there might be a turkey that trades in and out of there once in a while, but it's probably not going to hold them consistently. And there are more moist parts of the country where you don't necessarily need like a creek or a river or something that is running like that. There can be some swamp areas and stuff that might not hold turkeys during, let's say, the winter up here. But then as soon as there is water available, it might hold them during the spring. But the key is just you need to have a consistent water source. If you're only thinking about spring turkey hunting, um, and obviously That's easier to figure out than if, like with deer, trying to consider where a water source might be year round. It could change. You know, if there's a drought or whatever, then you need to think about those things like I mentioned, like rivers or spring-fed creeks or anything that's going to be there even when the times get tough. With turkeys in spring, you can pretty much figure out where the water is going to be, and if it's not a running water source, then if it's in a watershed and if you're somewhere where there's snow melt or just any lowland that's likely to hold water unless there's like a big drought, that's the starting point is figuring out where the water is. And then from there, and I would say this is true for anywhere in the country. Obviously, they got to have roost trees, unless you're talking about Hawaii, which is probably the only place where they don't necessarily need a tree to roost. Um, but people always talk about, oh, they got to have big roost trees. Turkeys will roost in a lot of different types of trees.
Hmm.
A lot of times they will choose the most obvious ones, you know, some 100-year-old gigantic oak or cottonwood or something like that. But up here, Minnesota, where we have really mixed habitat, diverse timber, lots of different options, I see them roost in places all the time that if you were to go walk through the woods, you would never guess, especially once they disperse and they're out of their winter flocks and the gobblers split up. They'll roost in all sorts of different places, man. They don't need that big of a tree. So you need trees. Ideally, some more mature trees are probably more likely to be in a spot like that. Um, but I wouldn't consider it nearly as much of a limiting factor to have mature trees as having water. So
Yeah.
once you find water, I think one thing that can help you narrow it in a little bit further is if you have some terrain to work with. Um, for whatever reason, they just seem to like areas with terrain, and I think it's a visibility thing. So even if it's just subtle terrain, um, down here we've got gigantic river valleys and bluff country and what we call coulees, just these nasty drainages, a lot of slopes and stuff to work with, and the turkeys love it. But that's the extreme. If you look at other parts of the country, it might just be something as subtle as a couple little rolling hills or something that they might habituate around. And again, I think it's mainly a visibility thing. So whether they're roosting on it or not, it's an area that they're likely to gravitate toward. They like to hang around terrain. I found that everywhere in the country. Um, so kind of looking at that water, trying to find something with terrain, ideally some mature timber. You know, up here we got a lot of aspens and stuff, so you're not going to want like a 2-year-old aspen stand or
Hmm.
something that they physically can't land in and roost in. But shit, you got a 4 or 5-year-old tree that's tall enough that has some limbs on it, they can roost in it. Um, so I look at those things first, and then I consider the most obvious food sources. So if you're in a part of the country where there's agriculture, if you got your water, if you got your suitable roosting habitat, ideally with some terrain, then finding those obvious food sources. Any kind of agriculture, nearby adjacent agriculture, if you put those three things together and there's a population of turkeys in the area, almost certainly they're going to be there at some point during the spring. They might not be there all the time, but when you put that triple thing together with the water, suitable roosting habitat, and agriculture, they're probably going to be there. Um, if you don't have more obvious agricultural habitat or feed, then you need to pay attention to more of the natural stuff. Hardwoods, where they're going to produce mast, acorns, etc. Bugs, people overlook bugs. It's not as easy to pinpoint where bugs are going to be, but they're
Hmm.
pretty much everywhere. You know, that's why they scratch all the time. They're mainly looking for bugs. Yeah, they're looking for acorns and stuff too, but mainly when you see a turkey scratching, they're trying to pick bugs. And people think about the really obvious stuff like cornfield or a corn feeder or, like I said, acorns. But people don't think as much about bugs, which is a huge part of their diet, and that's why they can live in so many places because they don't need the most abundant, obvious food sources. They can make a living
Hmm.
on bugs, which are everywhere.
We have a lot of mesquite flats, obviously in
Yep.
Texas.
Yep.
You've been here, hunted here, and those usually are full of grasshoppers.
Yeah, man.
And that's what, because there's no I don't, there might be some kind of seeds or like grass seeds or something that they're really eating, but if you were to kill a turkey in a mesquite flat and there's no agriculture around, and I've done this, and you open up their crop, like you're primarily going to see bugs, and a lot of those are going to be grasshoppers. And I can tell you right now, last spring, where I shot two gobblers on my existing deer lease that we're getting off in June, and I would get photos. I'm not kidding you, from that 360 revolver of grasshoppers, like
Huh.
hundreds of them, right?
Wow.
And of course the turkeys were there, right? That's what they were eating. And the
Yep.
the trail camera was sending me. I was like, dang
That's
it,
really cool.
I'm looking for a picture of a turkey, and I'm getting annoyed. And then I finally realized, wait, this is great. If there's this many grasshoppers, then there's gonna be turkeys here.
Yeah,
So
for sure. It's amazing how fast. Like if there's I'm not a freaking what do you call the bug scientists or bug biologists?
like etymologist or
Yeah,
entomologist,
yeah. I'm
uh,
not that, but I can tell you it's pretty amazing. Like
etymologist.
you can see turkeys will find like a cyclical bug food source, and they just like know. It's like I don't know if it's just imprinted in them or what, but they know where to go and when to find that kind of stuff. Like you're talking about grasshoppers. Um, and a lot of times, like especially if you see turkeys out in an area where it's like someone looks at it and they're like, why are they out there all the time? There's nothing for them to eat. Well, it's bugs. There's
Mm-hmm.
bugs out there. I see that all the time, and they're out there pecking. And like you said, it's always good to open their crop, see what they've been eating, especially if you're gonna be hunting an area consistently, like I
Mm-hmm.
do around here. I hunt a lot of the same places throughout the whole season because we can get multiple tags. And it's always interesting, especially when you open up a crop on a bird and you find like corn in it, and you know for a fact that the nearest cornfield is like a half mile away or some pretty far distance.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show you like how far they're willing to travel sometimes to key in on a food source like that. Like they don't have to live right next to it or right on it. Like they'll travel to it just like deer will for a destination food source.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. What's the craziest thing you've seen, like from a roosting perspective? And I'll give you one. We were hunting. My buddy and I were hunting in South Texas, down by the King Ranch, and we get back from turkey hunting, and we get back to camp, and there's like a concrete slab, and the guy's like, the outfitter. He's a nilgai outfitter primarily, and they have a nice lodge there and everything. But we're like, man, that's a little fancy for us, and we also don't want to pay. Like if you book the lodge, you have to have a professional cook and all this other stuff. And it's like, can we just camp out on that slab, like put a tent up and put our coolers there or whatever? And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. So we're spending the night there and have a few drinks, and we're cooking. We've got a propane stove and cooking dinner and carrying on, playing music. And we wake up the next morning to a damn gobbler in the dead hardwood above us, just gobbling. Wait, it's time to wake up, guys. But we got back after dark, so he was already there. He never made a sound.
Yep.
He didn't leave. Turkeys don't like to fly in the dark. They don't like to do it. Owls kill them. Their best play is to just be still. But
Hmm.
then, as soon as the sun starts coming up, it's like time to wake up.
Yeah,
We're like,
man. Just
how did
chicken.
this thing stay there? We're making all kinds of racket, like we
Yeah.
were just mind blown that he wasn't too bothered by the amount of noise and disturbance that a couple humans were making.
Yeah, it's sometimes the way they can habituate, and also no different than a deer. Like they can tell the difference, like if it's what they would consider normal, non-threatening activity versus someone out there trying to kill them. Like
You're giving a turkey a lot of credit there.
they wise, I don't know, man, they wise up pretty quick. I've had some run circles around me, too
Mhm.
many. I don't think it was a coincidence, but crazy roosting stuff. I don't know, man.
Have you ever
One
sat down and just been like, another time I was hunting in Jack County, and this place had big hardwoods, and that's where it was like that's where they roost, right? And I'd hunted there before, and I wanted to get close, but not like set up on top of them. And I sat underneath the mesquite tree in one of those flats, and the bird didn't say anything. I think there was two of them, and then it was literally the next tree over from me, like 10 feet away. And they flew down, and it was like you said, they'll roost anywhere, especially once they disperse during breeding season. I was like, these birds weren't supposed to be here, and it kind of screwed up my hunt because they
Yeah.
ended up both being gobblers, and I had sat down right underneath them essentially. But
Oh, I have unintentionally sat under many, many, many roosts, and
mhm.
it sucks, man, because as soon as you realize they're above you, you're just pinned. Like I like
Yep.
to put myself in a position where I can, you know, be close enough, but still be able to move around a little bit, stretch my legs, take a
Mhm.
leak if I have to, whatever. But when you get in on them on accident like that, sometimes it can be a long ass morning because especially those mornings where you get stuck under one that doesn't come down right away when the rest of the turkeys you'd think would be coming off fly down. Um, you get one that hangs up there till 8 or 9 in the morning. I've actually had them do that, and they've actually outlasted me. Like I'm like, dude, I can't do this anymore. Like I have to move or do something. My legs falling asleep or whatever. But
You're playing you're playing chase for the rest of the morning though when that happens.
oh
When
yeah,
you end up underneath them and then they go. There's no, like you said, you want to kind of be in a position to intercept them, see where they're going, cut them off. You're always just chasing them after that, which
yep,
is not the most fruitful way to do it.
yeah. Another cool couple different cool roost things I've encountered. Will and I were hunting a box canyon down in your neck of the woods 3 springs ago, I think it was. And these turkeys, it was this box canyon on this dry creek bed, and these turkeys were roosting on the canyon walls, but they
Huh.
were flying down onto the flat on top of the canyon. So instead of pitching down right off the roost into the valley, down into the canyon like you think they would, a lot of these turkeys were flying down onto the flat up top, and they were walking over to the edge of the cliff, and it looked like they were like base jumping off the cliff. It was so freaking cool, man. They'd fly down, they'd assemble, they'd get their morning shit sorted out with each other, and then they'd walk over to the edge of that canyon and just dive off that thing and go down into the canyon. So that was a cool roost thing.
But they weren't even roosting in trees. They were just roosting on the, or were there
No, they
little
were they
trees
were
there?
roosting in trees that were
Okay.
like, the trees that were coming off the canyon walls where you can
Right.
literally see the roots like
Oh.
exposed going into the rocks.
Uh,
These trees that are just like coming out of the walls. And so they'd fly off those, they'd land on the top of the canyon, and they'd walk over and just like dive off. It was really cool. I've never seen anything like that. And actually, those same birds, while we were down there, um, one of the coolest things I've ever seen with a turkey, maybe the coolest thing. We spooked some down in the canyon, and they flew up on the wall, and they were running on the vertical walls like sheep. I'd
oh
never
wow.
seen anything like that.
Huh.
Like they were scaling. They were just using the littlest tiny outcroppings, and they were running along the walls
Hmm.
rather than flying all the way up to the top. They flew up onto the walls, and they're running across the walls. It was really cool.
They're not the smartest.
Yeah. Well, they'd be if they didn't have wings,
Hmm.
they'd be in trouble.
Yeah. Well, they're not. You know the dumbest animal that we hunt, in my opinion. Take a guess.
Better not say turkey. I'm gonna have to hang up.
No, no, grouse. Just like I think, and maybe
Absolutely.
we're seeing, and I've said that before to like an upland hunter from, kind of like the big woods up north where you're at, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and they were like, "Man, you should try to hunt our grouse." They're not like, because I've literally seen my buddy, and I don't know if this is legal or not. It wasn't me that did it. He had a license. He killed a blue grouse with a rock. Literally threw the rock at it. The bird was so
I
dumb.
believe it. I believe it.
And and I love grouse hunting. That's how I ended up falling in love with elk hunting. Was I would go to New Mexico to go grouse hunting, and then I would start seeing all these elk, and I was like, now how do I kill one of these things? Like, okay, screw the grouse. And now the
Yeah.
grouse are just kind of, passively hunt them. Most of them I shoot these days are with a bow. But I did take my dog, previous dog, on a grouse hunt in New Mexico. Just me and her. We did a black bear hunt with hounds in between, and did a little fly fishing and outside of Taos. That was one of the coolest trips I've ever been on. But again, grouse are stupid.
Yeah, dude, I would say that goes for anywhere they exist, whether it's blue grouse out in the mountains or rough grouse up here. Yeah,
They're
they're
just as dumb up there. Okay, then these guys were full of
yeah.
crap because they were trying to tell me, "Oh, well, ours are pressured," and I'm
Well,
like,
no, that does make a difference for sure. Just like with anything, I mean,
because when you're walking around a national forest, those grouse really are not pressured. They're just not. They don't
yeah,
see
you
a
can
lot of
hear
deer.
him peeping, and you walk up on them, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, buddy actually was out. I think he was out turkey hunting several years ago, and he was wearing a ghillie suit, and there was a rough grouse chirping around by him. So he got up and he just slowly walked over to it, and he just leaned down and freaking grabbed the thing and sent me a Snapchat. Literally, this grouse was like, "Oh, it's kind of weird that tree's moving," and then it wasn't even like he didn't like jump on it or nothing. He just kind of like reached down and picked it up and cradled it and sent me a Snapchat. So yeah,
Wow. Yeah. Did you ever watch that show Alone?
I have, yeah.
So I don't know if you saw the most recent season, but the dude from Labrador. I'm not gonna say he won.
Most recent season, no.
Okay, I won't spoil it. But this massive dude from Labrador, he fastens a pole. He calls it a catch pole, and he puts a noose around the end of it, and he just gets close enough to the grouse where he just slips the thing over their head, lifts it up, and then wrings their neck. Like
That's
he's catching them with the pole. I'm like,
that's
yeah,
wild fishing for grouse.
yeah. But anyway, turkeys are not that dumb. But turkeys not that smart either. But their eyesight will give you fits.
Yeah, I wouldn't even we always speak about them in terms of intelligence. I just yeah, they might not have the highest intelligence, but their survival instinct is absolutely incredible. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, where the places they've expanded to where they got no business being, where they got no business living, like in northern Minnesota and whatnot, like, biologists, they drew a line in the sand when turkeys started repopulating up here. It was probably about halfway up the state, and they're like, okay, that they're not going to be able to have a sustainable population above this line, and they have
Mm.
far surpassed it. And not only that, but they thrive up in that part of the country. Despite the winters, I don't know what it is, dude, but some of the best, biggest turkey, most successful turkey populations with the best poult recruitment I've seen are in that northern part of the state. I don't know if it's just there might be tremendous brooding cover up there or something.
Mm.
I'm not sure what it is, but it's wild.
Mm.
Um, I actually saw when I was out
Are
yesterday.
these Easterns?
Yeah, they're all Easterns.
Okay.
There are no hybrids in Minnesota, um, and eastward. If you go west, as soon as you get into South Dakota, and even North Dakota, that's where you start to run into hybrids. But when I was out yesterday, I actually came across. I've seen some big flocks of turkeys, and I saw a flock one time in Oklahoma that had 52 jakes in it. That was really impressive. I don't know if I've ever seen that many jakes before, but I might have potentially beat a new record yesterday, at least for Easterns. I came up on a spot that I was going to renew permission on, and there were 20 longbeards out in this field in front of this dude's
Oh
house.
wow.
It wasn't like 10 or 12 or 14. It was at
Mm.
least, there might have been more than 20. I know for sure there were 20, but um,
Mm.
that was pretty cool. I mean, I've seen a couple flocks out west uh, with 20 longbeards, but that might that might have been a new
Mm.
record for me for
So
Easterns.
you have I'm assuming you've been to Florida before?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I've been down
Okay.
there a handful of times.
So you've got multiple slams at this point?
Yeah, yeah,
Right on.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Florida.
know. I'm a pretty diehard turkey hunter, but I haven't really expanded past what's been available to me in Texas. And we can kill 4 turkeys, and most years I either kill 3 or 4. Um, I just went a year or two in there. It was like one or two. It's been a tough season, but generally speaking, I stack them up, and they're all Rios. And I just haven't. I don't know. That's one thing I like to travel to hunt, but that's one thing that I haven't done yet. But Tennessee, hopefully, get my first Eastern this year, and then that whole Florida thing really is interesting to me. But like we were saying earlier, we alluded to the fact that Florida's a different animal, and it's just you've got to get your Osceola, supply and demand, going back to the increasing cost of hunting, right?
Yep.
And everyone needs it for their slam. So now you're at like a $2,000 or $3,000 turkey hunt for one bird.
Yeah, yeah. If you're gonna do the private ground stuff, it's all up in that. That's kind of the price range these days. There's a ton of public down there, but I can tell you one guy that we work with, Roy Holdford. He goes by Curl. He has a pretty cool YouTube channel, Turkey Van Tour. So this dude just travels the whole country during spring in a van and kills
Mm.
turkeys all over the place. Um, he just texted me yesterday. He finally killed his bird. Uh, and he's not full of shit. 6 days, 75 miles on foot down there
Mm.
on public. Only struck one gobbler, and it was the one he killed yesterday.
Wow.
And it was a real deal Osceola. Black. His wings were just jet black, very little white barring. Um,
Uh,
awesome,
wow.
awesome. Pretty. If you're gonna kill an Osceola, like that's a pretty damn cool.
So this guy is a very polished turkey hunter, and it took him 7 days,
Mm-hmm.
a week, to
6 days.
find one turkey and kill it.
Yeah.
That's not a very. You know what? I might just pay the $2,500, dude.
Yeah, dude.
That's not a good sales pitch for public land turkey hunting in Florida. I mean, good for him, right? That's good for his drive and his determination. But I don't. What does the average guy that's not driving the country in a van hunting turkeys have 6 days, 7 days to try to strike a gobbler?
I
No.
haven't hunted public in Florida. I know a lot of people who have. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a reasonable average.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously you can luck into them as well. And I think from what I understand, the way to go down there is there are public chunks down there that are draw hunts, so
Mm.
it limits the population of hunters a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, for me, I really value encounters a lot. Like I want to see more turkeys doing turkey things, as many as possible in the course of a spring.
Yeah.
So I think it's well worth hunting a ranch where where there's a good population. You're going to be able to see Osceolas doing what Osceolas do. I
Yeah.
mean, if I went down there for 6 days and I only saw one bird, I'd feel like I really missed out on the experience. I want to see them out there doing their thing. So it's a
Sure.
trade-off for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Well, and I always say uh, turkey hunting in spring is comparable. It's similar to elk. You're trying to call them in. But that guy took it to the next level because if you had one encounter with a bull in 6 days, where it's like I came to full draw, okay, I'm not might not be complaining about that. But for a
Right,
turkey,
right.
like that really is turning turkey hunting into elk hunting.
It's
Oh,
rough, man.
jeez.
It's
Yeah.
rough. I
And
never had.
if I didn't hear a bugle for 6 days, I'd have been. I'm like I'm out of here. I got to find something different. Like.
Yeah,
But
that's
he did
brutal.
put boots on the ground. You said 75 miles. That's he's dedicated for sure. Um,
Yeah.
so what in your experiences having done a lot of traveling to turkey hunt, and I ask everybody that's a serious turkey hunter this question, and it's always one of two answers. It's either Merriam or a Rio. But which one's the easiest to kill? And I know that's circumstantial depending on where you are or whatnot, but you have to have in the back of your mind like, oh, this one's. Everyone says Easterns are so educated. You're like oh
Well,
no, they're all smart. I don't know.
it it is circumstantial, but it all comes down to pressure. And
Or maybe
man,
those Merriams live on those big open places out west. Maybe they don't get as much pressure. I don't know.
that's exactly what it is, man. Hardest turkey hunt I've ever done. I know you asked for easiest, but hardest I've done was a couple springs ago in Colorado. I got my ass kicked. Um, I was there too early. If I would have been there a week later, it wouldn't have been the same circumstances.
Uh-huh.
They're so dependent on the weather and the snow line out there. I tried to force it. My buddy was warning me. He's like, dude, it might be a little too early, but I was like, man, this is where it fits in my schedule. I'll make it happen. And we did get on a couple birds, but I ended up not killing one. And that was a tough pill to swallow. Um, those are all Merriams.
Uh-huh.
Um, but the reason I bring that up is because, yeah, Merriams get a reputation for being quote unquote stupid. So do Rios. But if you look at those birds, typically where you have the best Merriams and Rio hunting, they are unpressured. Um, so I think that's a huge part of it. If you told me, if you asked me, if you're like, hey, you got 3 days to kill a turkey or whatever amount of time, it doesn't really matter, I guess. Even if you said I got a day, and I could choose the subspecies, I would choose an Eastern.
Hmm.
Um, I would choose an Eastern up here in my neck of the woods in the last 2 weeks of May. Um,
Hmm.
I just, yeah, there's just, I'd have the most confidence with that. And I've hunted them all over the place.
Yeah.
But
So you like hunting, well, you like hunting all of early, middle, late season, but you think it's late season really increase your odds on a big tom?
yeah,
So break that down.
well, I mean, I think you're always going to see a surge in success when you can get out there. Um, after the majority of hens have started nesting, and after the gobblers know that. Um, this statement isn't backed by science or research, but I would argue that in my experience, um, there's a period where the majority of hens are on nest and the gobblers still haven't wised up to it yet. So that can be a little bit of a lull because they'll just follow them around
Yeah.
and they might start the day with one hen, realize she's not receptive, move on to another one, realize she's not receptive. I think there's like this window of time where they're still kind of just going about their daily routine that they have been for, a month. And then all of a sudden they're like, man, I need to start being more aggressive and covering more ground if I'm going to breed more hens. And right when it hits that point, that's when they start to get a little bit more suicidal. And up here, that's in the last 2 weeks of May, and
Mm.
I'd say it is weather dependent. Um, but right before it gets too hot and nasty, like when you start to feel like you got to wear, like when you start to feel like you got to be concerned about mosquitoes up here, that seems to be when it starts to taper off, and that's when you can feel the shift, and then the gobblers start getting back into bachelor groups, and they just start becoming lethargic, and you can still get them fired up, but you might see three longbeards together, you get one fired up, he starts coming your way, and then all of a sudden it's like he just forgot what was going on. He's like,
Mm.
oh, that's right, it's summer, and then he'll go back to his buddies. But there's that window when most of the hens are on nest, and the gobblers know it, and that's when we start seeing them show up all sorts of random places around here. I say around here, but I mean that's gonna go for anywhere. But
Yeah.
the thing is, either people don't have seasons that go that long, or they just don't hunt that long to see that. We go to June 1st, so I know it's not that way for every state where eastern turkeys exist, but that's why it can be so damn good up here, and that's why like the harvest in Wisconsin is intense. I think we killed like 50 or 55,000 birds last year in Wisconsin. And we've been killing, I think that might have been a new record, but we've been consistently having really high harvests for a long time. It's proven to be sustainable.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I
so
just go until the season ends or until I look at my license and there's no tags left there. So,
yeah,
but I love it, man.
that period though, where most of those hens are on nest and the gobblers are wise to it, that's and it's like it can be a really short window. The peak of that might only be you might only get like 3 days of that. where
Mhm.
they're just, you're seeing them at all hours of the day. You're seeing them in weird spots. They're venturing out of, if you want to relate it to deer, kind of their core areas, or even their home ranges. You'll just see them. They'll start patrolling remote woodlots and stuff, and
It's
island woodlots.
weird how, like, so one of my deer setups on my lease, well, I don't see turkeys there. Maybe a couple times during the winter, just passing through, then nothing. And then last year, it was well into the breeding season. I just started getting picture of three toms, like nice 10-inch beards, right? And I was like, oh well, thank you. Yeah, immediately was. I think it was like 3 days in a row. I got photos. Like I'm going to the lease now, right?
Yeah, man.
I'd been out there a week before. Had a couple other out of town hunts planned, but I was like, well, I'm going to go at least kill a couple of these. And and why they started showing up there? Well, those grasshoppers, right? Right. But also what you're alluding to, I never saw any hens all spring. I never saw a hen at that feeder. So the hens are dispersed, and it's crazy just how these gobblers, you don't have them all year. And this transcends properties all over the country, right? If you're a turkey hunter, hey, just because I don't have turkeys here during the fall does not mean that there won't be some turkeys here during the spring. And that,
Yeah, and if you're serious about it, you gotta pay attention, and this is where HuntStand becomes key. Whenever I'm out and about, if I see a turkey, I always mark it. Doesn't matter what time of year it is, but especially during the spring. Um, Even if I'm like not, if I'm out driving to a wedding or whatever, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. If I see a bird, I'm going to mark it as a sighting in HuntStand. And what you will see is year after year, these birds are going to show up in these random places, and you realize it's not random. They'll come back to these same, what seem like random places at about the same time every year. And that can be sick because, for instance, I just door knocked on a property yesterday, where I've been seeing these birds do this for 3 years. It's an island woodlot. It's not connected to anything else. So they got to travel to get there. And then for whatever reason, they set up shop there during the last 2 weeks of May,
hmm.
and they stay there. And then they probably end up leaving once it gets into June. They probably go back to wherever they came from. But you start to realize these trends. And what's cool about that is a lot of these will be overlooked spots that somebody wouldn't consider even trying to get permission on or even trying to hunt. Um, and then, by the time you realize it, it might be too late. So if you can keep track of those kinds of spots, and they also might, if you're doing like I do and you're asking, you're door knocking, some of those spots can be the best because they don't ever have people asking them because they just look so unsuspecting.
Hmm.
Like no one in their right mind is gonna ask them to turkey hunt there because it looks like crap if you don't pay attention while you're out there. And some of it, you might not put it together right away if you're out there marking all these sightings. Well, then the following year or the year after, whatever, suddenly everything clicks and you're just like, oh, it's May 17th. I saw a bird out in this weird spot last year and it was May 20th. And the
Yeah.
next year it's May 18th or whatever. And you're like, huh, there's a reason they're going there. And I think also that imprints in them, they teach each other a lot of things. So a lot of their habits are repeated through what they learned from the previous generation. So some of those spots, unless you kill every damn turkey that's in there, they're probably going to pass it on over and over and over again. They'll just keep going back.
Yeah.
And unless something crazy changes with the habitat or the crop rotation or whatever, they're probably going to be there.
Well, so those turkeys that I had, and so I said earlier I got that strutter. Oh, let me clarify. That was on my Oklahoma farm because the Texas one I haven't seen a turkey yet this spring. I've seen some, in the winter and out in the winter wheat field, but the ranch is pretty big. And where I shot those two last year, I set up a couple hundred yards from that feeder, and they weren't coming. This is another cool thing. And people might say, "Oh, well, you're lazy." Whatever. Time is money, and we go back to being efficient. Like I knew those birds weren't coming until 10 o'clock every day. So I slept in. I think I got up at like 8:30,
Yeah. Yeah,
strolled
man.
over there to that mesquite flat about 9:15, lazily set out my decoys, took out my slate call. They never gobbled, but it took all of about 5 minutes. Here they come over the ridge. And I could have shot all three of them, and I didn't on purpose because I was like, I'm going to shoot that one next year. And hopefully he brings buddies, right? Like,
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
You said if they imprint, right? So maybe, hopefully he doesn't remember getting shot at, but he remembers there was grasshoppers there and sometimes a corn buffet as well. So,
Yeah, that's the other thing. We try to be really responsible. Like we get all these properties, and if we wanted to, we could go in there and we could kill every freaking longbeard that's in there. But we kind of do our own, um, apply our own management per se. So like that spot yesterday where I saw the 20 longbeards, we might shoot two out of there. But on a normal property, most of the time we'll shoot one, which is probably overly conservative a lot of the times. But that's why we like to get as many places as possible. We don't have to put too much pressure on any given place. We don't have to
how
shoot
many
more.
tags can you get locally on your side and then the Wisconsin side? So, like, what is your
Minnesota, you can only shoot one bird,
okay?
but Wisconsin, it's all based on a quota system. So, and I hesitate to speak too much about this, but because it's been getting way more popular, and the numbers prove it. It's all quota systems. So in some zones, you're going to be able to, there's the initial sale period of when you put in for a tag. You draw that tag, and then all the surplus licenses go on sale in mid-March. And then once they're on sale, you can buy one per day until they sell out. And there are certain zones and time periods up here that never sell out.
So I thought Texas had it. We had it pretty good with 4 tags, right? You kind of have like
Up here, you could technically you could end up at June 1st with 20 tags in your pocket, technically.
Yeah.
For me, I like to try to shoot one bird per time period, and then I spend most of my time bringing out other people.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, I don't need to kill a zillion. I like to shoot a handful, but I like to bring out other friends and stuff who don't have as much time to screw around with this as me.
Yeah. Right. Right. Let's talk decoys. Obviously, GSM owns AvianX. They make the best turkey decoys on the market. We had Fred Zink on last year. That was kind of his baby that he ultimately would sell to GSM. And I mean, I've got all of our decoys. They are the most lifelike decoys that I've used. And I've run through a lot of decoys in about 15 years of turkey hunting. And I don't treat them nice, or I don't take care of them. They go in the bag, they get beat to hell, and then they hang in the garage, and then, it's rinse and repeat, get beat to hell again.
Yep.
These things stand up. They are attention to detail unmatched on them. But I will say, like, in the more that I run and gun, the less likely I am to use a tom just because it's so big. So typically I'll throw one Jake and maybe 2, maybe 3 hens in there. And they've got all different kinds. You got like a sitting one, laying down one. I forget, they have names up for them all, but feeding one, head up one, whatever. What is your kind of go-to if you're running and gunning? So you're gonna set up hopefully close to a roost that you've located on HuntStand. Turkeys don't do the deal early in the morning, and now you're trying to cut them off. You're playing with them. You're playing the game. What is in your bag, or do you even carry decoys? I don't know. Some guys are like, they turn their nose up and be like, decoys are cheating.
Yeah.
Like, I'd love to see what you think about reaping then.
Yeah. Yeah, there's all these different factions now. And whatever, hunt how you want to hunt. I just I turkey hunt so much. I like to kill turkeys a lot of different ways. Some with decoys, some without decoys, whatever. Kind of just depends on the situation. But if I am running a decoy or any kind of decoy setup, um, I think by and large, the most effective is just a single Jake, potentially a Jake combined with a lay down hen. Um, but if you only had one, I would say a single Jake, and I think that's going to be the most effective
And why is that? Because the sounds that we're making are not they're not a Jake. So
because
you're putting a replica out there,
yep,
and then you're saying something different. So I guess the thought is you're just trying to make the longbeard think that there's a hen around.
that's right.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah. And I'm mainly referring to shotgun hunting. If you're going to be
Yeah.
bow hunting turkeys, whether you're in a
If you're
ground
gonna
blind
be,
or
you mean if
not,
you're gonna be deer hunting turkeys?
yeah, yeah, if you're going to be deer hunting turkeys, um,
I'm not
then
against it. I've never done it because sitting in a blind waiting for turkeys to come does not appeal to me.
oh, I've done it every way. I've gun hunted them out of a blind. I've crossbow hunted them. I've bow
Sure.
hunted.
But are you
Oh,
running and gunning with a bow in your hand? I mean, the one
no,
thing
no,
that
because
turkeys can do well is see, right? And like now I've got to come to full draw on this bird.
yeah,
Like, I don't
I'm
know.
not a fan of bow hunting turkeys. I killed one just so that I could have at least enough authority to talk smack about it.
Right.
I'm not about it.
I
The
shot a black bear out of a tree with a bow, and I felt the exact same way. Like I've shot black bears with rifles before, right?
Yep.
And I was like, well, I'm gonna do this hunt with hounds in New Mexico. It was when I that grouse trip. I did not enjoy that experience. Like I would have, I felt like the bear deserved better. It took too many arrows. The bear was up too high, and it just was like I was like, why? I just did this so that I could, and I'd already shot a bear with a bow, but I was like, this will
Yeah.
be easy because the bear's going to be in a tree. And then I was like, walked away from it, being like, well, I don't need to do that again.
Yep. Contentious topics. Sure. Get a lot of heat about this kind of stuff, but again, I don't care how anybody chooses to hunt. I just I think bow hunting turkeys is personally I feel like it's anticlimactic. Like there's just something about not going out with a bang. It just thunk, thup, 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 thup. It's just not the same. But
I need the
also,
boom flop.
yeah, I mean, dude,
The boom.
it's like this crescendo, and if you don't have that, it's just kind of like, oh, you know. And I've put several of
Apologies
those.
to all of the guys in the Midwest that are sitting in pop ups this weekend
Hey
with a bow in their hand. We still love you,
man,
and you do you.
my uncle does it every year. He only uses a decap, a uh, Magnus bullhead decap. He only head shoots them. So basically, he either misses or kills them.
Mm-hmm.
My my main problem with bow hunting turkeys is there's an extremely high wound rate. I don't care what anybody says. I'd love for there's some formal statistics to come out about it, but I think it's well over 40%. Um, that's just based on anecdotal knowledge. It's hard to kill a turkey with a bow when you shoot him in the body. It's people underestimate it. Um, and yeah, there's nothing worse than watching a turkey run off or fly off with an arrow in it because you probably aren't going to find them. They don't bleed, and they're real good at hiding once they're wounded.
Right.
But no, back to the decoy thing. Lots of different setups depending on the situation. I think if you have the ability to scout your birds and pay attention to what they're doing up until the day that you hunt them, that should be the primary way that you determine what decoy setup you're going to use. If you see strutters that are hanging out together, then maybe you want to use a strutter, not because you're trying to trigger their aggression, but because maybe they just want to hang out, depending on what part of the season it is. Um, if you see strutters that are really aggressive, just not tolerating jakes and they're running jakes around, trying to keep them out of there, um, then probably just run a jake. But I think if you were to only choose one turkey decoy to carry, I would say a jake. And to answer your question, yes, you're hen calling. They come looking for the hen. They see the Jake. They're like, "Where's the hen?"
Mm-hmm.
And they come over to try to bully him out of the way, assuming that there's a hen around somewhere. Um, Not to mention, even if they're not necessarily interested in what's going on with the hen, when their testosterone is elevated during that part of the spring, they just usually don't want to tolerate a Jake being in their area, and If you have a strutter decoy out and they're subordinate and they've already had their ass kicked by another big bird, they might not want to take them on, but they might have a little bit more courage if it's just a Jake, and they might,
Mm,
even if it's a subordinate or satellite bird, he might be willing to come in and take on that Jake, but not necessarily a gobbler.
mm.
So it's all these just pecking order dynamics you need to consider. I have a
So
funny,
then, go ahead.
well, the if you really think into it, probably too deep, the one downside to using a Jake can be if you have a problem with Jakes, and I say a problem, if you got a bunch of bully Jakes that are running around in your area, Longbeards they don't want nothing to do with them.
Right.
It can be that you know, you put out a Jake and a Longbeard sees it and gets the hell out of there because he thinks there's six of his buddies around the corner. They're gonna gang
Mm,
up on him like they've done. Um, Funny story, I was just photographing turkeys in Wisconsin one time. Had a Jake decoy out. Um, this gang of Jakes was in the area. They came in, bullied up on my Jake decoy for a while, and then they left. And this Longbeard, so I actually had a Jake hen combo out. This Longbeard kept trying to come in. He wanted to sneak in to this decoy setup. It was an Avian X Jake and hen, and he would gobble, he would gobble, he would gobble. Those Jakes would run over to him, run him off, and then they would leave again. For about 2 hours, he kept trying to come back and sneak into the decoy setup. And then finally he got smart enough and he's like, all right, I'm just gonna hang back for a while and let these jokers leave so then I can finally sneak in. And I was able to actually watch the moment he realized that those Jakes were gone. It was the funniest thing ever because he would come slinking in, and then they would go chase him off. He'd come slinking in, they'd chase him off, and then he went and waited a little while longer. They finally actually left, and then all of a sudden he starts coming slinking in. He realizes that they're not there anymore, and this the moment he realized, he went from just like slinking in to he starts on a full run coming into our decoys, but he wasn't gobbling, he wasn't making a
mm.
sound. And right when he got up the courage to come run in there, the bastard actually tripped on a stick and fell, rolled over. So he comes running in, trips over a stick, literally kind of does like a sideways cartwheel, gets up, like shakes his feathers off and looks around like embarrassed, and
Like
then he
nobody saw that. All
walked
right,
in.
I'm good.
It was hilarious. And then he came in, he just breasted up against the Jake decoy, kind of postured, but he wouldn't try to climb up on the hen. And then
Mm,
eventually he just got bored and left. But
mm,
it was pretty funny to watch that dynamic. He knew those Jakes were around. He didn't want nothing to do with them.
hmm.
Eventually he got the courage.
So as far as calling goes, I mean, anybody that's looking to just start turkey hunting, I mean, just get yourself a box call.
Right.
It's foolproof. That's how I killed my first turkey, making that noise. Didn't know what I
Yep.
was doing. Put out one strutter decoy, and I've told this story before. They come down off the roost. I go, here he comes. Boom. 30 seconds. He's dead. I've blown out the roost. Didn't know what I was doing right at that time. At the time, but I was
Yep.
like, turkey hunting's the best. This is so easy. Been humbled many times since then. But this is
Yep.
just the HS strut, raspy old hen,
Classic
and
call.
yeah, and any box call. I mean, obviously we like our brand, but just pick one up if you're a novice turkey hunter or you want to get into it, you don't have to be proficient with the diaphragm. You don't need to know how to use a slate call, though that's pretty easy as well. But just get out there and do it. Get a decoy. Find a buddy that has one. It's addicting. I have to throw that caveat in there. So if you don't need another hobby, maybe don't take that advice.
Yeah.
But turkey hunting is awesome. It's something to do during the spring, and it'll get its hooks in you. I'll tell you that. But say you've got a gobbler that's hung up, and the old faithful not working. Okay, what do I need to do now, Josh? Tell me some sounds that can save the day because this he's hung up at 80 yards, and I don't have TSS loads to shoot him at that distance. So, which I don't use those anyway. I like to shoot him at 20 yards right in the face, personally.
Well, if you got one hung up, uh, if you're in the wide open, if you're set up in the wide open, and whether you got decoys out or not, and he's hung up, okay, if let's put it this way, if you're in the open, you got decoys set up, and
Mm,
he won't commit, you might be hosed. He's already heard the call. He's already got the visual. There's a reason that he doesn't want to come any closer, and that goes back to the decoy setup. What do you have out there? If you've only got a single hen, he expects her to come to him. That's
right.
just the order of nature. If you got a Jake, maybe he's not interested in a fight. If you got a Jake hen combination, again, maybe he's not interested in a fight. So that's the trouble with hunting birds in fields and openings and senderos and stuff like that. If they don't commit and you're on a decoy setup, then you're gonna have to probably reposition on them to get them to break.
Hmm.
If you are not running decoys, it's kind of the same thing. If they don't commit, they're hearing the call and they don't have the visual confirmation, they smell a rat sometimes, you know. If they're not coming, then you know, that's not a good situation because they expect to get that visual confirmation. They're going to sit out there and strut and drum. They probably won't even gobble, but they will expect that if there's a hen there that they're hearing that call from, that she's going to at least expose herself. If she doesn't, then
Mm.
they're just like, I don't know about this.
I had this
So,
happen last spring. I took my one of my daughters out, and I'd already taken the other two on an out of town turkey trip. And so I took Frankie, and we have these two gobblers doing exactly that. And I think I had two hens, the lay down hen, a Jake, and then maybe one like feeding hen or something. So I had three decoys out. And I had a 12 gauge, and she had a 410. And I had those birds at like 50 yards, too far for her 410, right? Like just not, I wanted them inside 30 yards for her to effectively kill it. I don't want her wounding one. That would be a traumatizing experience for a 9-year-old girl at the time. And I can't get them to come any closer, and I've tried everything, but we can't move, right? We're pinned down, and we're on a fence line. The decoys are like you just said, they're out in the field. We're screwed. But I looked over at her and I was like, I could shoot them. She's like, don't you dare! Those are my turkeys. So nobody shot them. But we watched them, dude. For it was like an hour, and they just were hung up. That's the longest I've ever had that go on. And it's like every
mm,
call that I tried, I'm going through diaphragm, slate, box call, loud, soft. Doesn't matter. But they're not going anywhere. They're not scared, but they're not coming in.
yep.
And yeah, it's like you are hosed if you're on the edge if you're on a field and your decoys are out in the field. Like, well, I can't just go pick them up and move them.
Hmm.
They've seen the thing. They know what's up. It's frustrating, but
When you're in that scenario, sometimes there are things you can do to break them, and sometimes it's just time where their temperament changes. Literally, I've seen it many times where you have birds doing that. I've sat on them for hours, and then all of a sudden something just changes. Maybe the temperature goes up 3 degrees, or the sun hits them at a
mm,
different angle, or whatever the hell it is. They get triggered and they'll break. Usually they won't though. So you can escalate with your calling. One thing that can break them, I just there was a scenario last year where it worked. A fighting purr, sometimes that'll flip their trigger. That's usually the last thing I'll pull out. Just rip
mm,
real aggressively on a fighting purr. Sometimes that'll snap them out of it and get them to come. Otherwise, um, if you can do it safely and you're not against the religion of it, you keeping a tail fan or a strutter next to you on the ground, flashing that fan at them. Sometimes that'll get them to break, but 8 times out of 10, the only thing that's going to get them to break is a fresh setup and a reposition.
mm,
If you can slip out of there, uh, usually the best thing you can do is let them leave, just let them walk off, leave them alone, and then hook around on them and try to approach them from a different angle. Try to get into a place where they're going to have to come and look. So by the time they're in range, um, then you can kill them. Not just another open field setup. Ideally, get them
Mm.
into somewhere where they got to come and take a look, not where they can see you from 300 yards away and realize it's a ruse. Uh, but when it comes to hung up gobblers in the timber, I mean, usually the single most effective thing you can do is just shut up completely, not call, just shut off. And it might take a while, but in the timber, it's harder for them to see. They don't worry about that visual confirmation. And a lot of times they'll come and look for you. You'll just kind of have to sit them out and then they'll break. And if that doesn't work, same thing, reposition on them, drop back. I'll do that a lot if I have terrain to work with. If I got a bird like that's over a little rise or something and he won't break, and I've been working him for an hour, I'll actually physically run back 100 yards, just rip a call, get him fired up again, and then run back up to my spot where I originally was. He'll think that that hen is walking away from him,
Mm.
and then sometimes he'll close that distance. You know, thinking that he's just going to come hang up 100 yards away again, but
Right.
now he's in your bubble. And if you're buddy hunting, of course, one of the best things you can do is have your caller drop back, just like with elk hunting.
Hmm.
But that always comes at the risk that they're not going to come on the line that you hope they do. And sometimes they'll just come right to the caller, and if the caller's not hunting, then you're pinned down. But
Yeah.
a lot of different things you can do to break them. That's the fun of the chess match is figuring out when you get a bird like that. That's an accomplishment when you finally break them.
Mm. Yeah. Uh, and I go back to the elk comparison one more time. Um, this bull I shot with my bow in New Mexico. Uh, dude, he was acting just like a hung up gobbler. He was not coming in, not coming in. We got him to respond at like 9 a.m. By like 10:30, we'd made our way over to his bed, and I could see his antlers. And my buddy's calling. It's my day to hunt. We were alternating days. And we can't get him to number. We can't get him to stand up. But he's bugling from his bed, and he's up above us. He's like, you just crawl in there and kill him. And I was like, all right, I mean, I'll try. We're gonna get busted. I'm crawling in now. Okay.
Yep.
And there's like a little sapling in between me and that bull that I'm like trying to pretend like 210-pound human is gonna hide behind this tiny
Yeah.
little tree. But my buddy changed his calling technique and went from, trying to be kind of non-combative to just every time that bull would bugle, which he would, he'd cut him off, and then he would rip the loudest chuckle. Finally,
Laughing at
we're an hour and a half into this thing. He finally stands up, takes like 2-3 steps towards me, and I shot him in the chest at 14 yards.
Awesome.
Yeah, but we had to change what we were doing, like stylistically. How are we calling? Well, now we're just going to be super aggressive because we're here, probably going to get busted, but you never know.
You got to
So,
try.
got to throw the kitchen sink at them.
Yeah. And sometimes, I'm sure, it's probably the same way with elk. I've done some elk hunting. I'm assuming you've probably done a lot more than me, but sometimes the best thing you can do is just leave, go back and get them when they're right. As the Southern boys
Mm-hmm.
like to say, wait till they're right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you get a bird that just isn't doing it, and if you have the luxury of being able to just leave and come back or go hunt somewhere different and just let them rest, a lot of times that's all it takes. It might be an hour, it might be 3 hours, but just leave, come back, come in at him at a different angle, get him fired back up, and he might be right. I
Mm-hmm.
leave birds all the time, but I always make sure I got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K spots so I can do that. If you only got one property to hunt, back to the old sitting in the ground blind thing, or as a lot of the old timers and guys up here like to call them tents. They call their ground blinds tents.
Uh-huh.
If you got a small parcel and that's all you got, and you can't sit still, then that's probably the best, most effective way that you're going to kill one is sit in your tent and wait till one comes walking up.
Yeah. So, and I'm not hating on that. It's just, to me, our properties that I have access to are bigger than that, right? Bigger than
Yeah,
whatever, 120 acres. And the joy of turkey hunting is to get out and be in nature,
for
and
sure.
try to get the turkeys to do the deal, right? I want to see them do the deal. Whether that's come to my call, beat up my decoy, you know, all of the above, whatever it is. Like you said, you want to see turkeys doing turkey things. You want to
Yeah,
be in
man.
that moment. Yeah. Um, as we're wrapping up here, have you ever shot a turkey out of the air?
I've tried. I've tried shooting them out of the air when
Oh, dude, I have it. It makes a big thud.
it's not above me. No, I haven't shot one. I haven't flushed one and shot it, or tried to shoot it out of the air. But I have either missed or wounded a bird and then had it fly. And then of course you got to just dump your mag and try to kill them.
Hmm.
Do what you can. It's only happened a handful of times, but I've never shot one out of the air. Um, the one turkey I did kill with a bow, I shot, and that thing actually ended up taking off flying. I was pissed
Oh,
because I was
wow.
like, I must have hit him the wrong spot. So I didn't shoot him out of the air, but he did die in midair. That was pretty interesting. He was
Huh.
full flight and then just locked up like waterfall and just fell out of the sky out on his back with
Yeah.
the arrow still in him.
Uh, now, I'm not saying, let me clarify when I said I've shot a turkey out of the air. I didn't shoot him flying down from the roost. Like he came in, I think I moved or something, and he flew and I shot him, and he just folded up like a cheap tent. It's kind of
Yep,
awesome.
it's,
Um, yeah.
it's instinctual.
Yeah, right. It was, yeah, like shooting a flushing quail or something.
Yep.
But um, let's see if I had anything else. Are you are you shooting these birds? Are you in the whole TSS thing? Like I'm shooting. You are.
100%. Yep,
And are you
100%.
shooting them at 70 yards?
I have, but just like with anything, more experience you have, the wiser you get. And
Hmm.
I've learned a lot about TSS well, it's probably been out now to the masses. It's probably been out, I want to say 10 years or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, Prior to that, hardcore dudes were hand loading TSS for a while. But since it's been available, more readily available to the average consumer, um, I've been shooting it, and I've learned a hell of a lot about it, man.
Yeah.
Um, I Yeah, it's far superior in every way. Doesn't matter. It's not about shooting them far. They're just higher pellet counts, better patterns, better energy. They're just better across the board. If you're willing to pay what they're up to now, which is like shit. Most of it's like over $10 a shell now.
Hmm.
Um, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't know. I think the reason why I haven't, and I have had companies send it to me, right? I can use it if I want to, but I don't want to be tempted to shoot a bird at 80 yards when I want to shoot them at 20 or 30. And if I had it, I'd be like, I want to get, to me, that's winning. When you get them that close, then I know I did what I wanted to do. I saw what I needed to see.
yep.
That checks the box for me as to why I'm here. Inside 40 yards, that's really like 40 yards is about as far as I want to shoot a turkey. But I'm not knocking you. Like again, if you want to bow hunt them, if you want to shoot them at 80 yards, dude, doesn't matter to me. If you want to reap them, I have tried to reap, not very many times. Never had one just come in and I move my fan out of the way and shoot them in the face at 5 feet, like you see on YouTube. But
I've reaped a few, but I can tell you I've tried reaping a hell of a lot more. And anybody who says that it's 100% or 80% effective or anything, clearly hasn't done it enough. Um, yes, just like any other thing, it can be very effective. Is it
mm,
effective all the time? Hell no. Hell no. Not even close. Um, try to reap, try to go out and reap 20 of them and then let me know what your statistics are.
mm,
Um, Now if you're doing them all, like up here, for instance, if you're doing them all that if all your 20 experiences are the third week of May, then that's not really a fair sample size. There is probably going to be more effective during, like I said, certain windows.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, it's overstated. Um, but
A
yeah,
lot of
back to
animosity
this.
for it, and I get it. Maybe if places in some states have said, all right, none of this no reaping on public land. It's too dangerous, right? People do get shot. So personally would not be trying any reaping on public land for me, but I'm not opposed to doing it. Uh,
People do get shot, but actually, up until this point, statistically, there haven't been any more people that get shot reaping than they do just turkey hunting at all.
Mm.
Most people who have been shot turkey hunting are just walking around the woods, and someone's set up, keyed in, someone's calling back, and the guys are calling back and forth, and people shoot at movement. Because most of the time you're reaping, you're doing it in an open area. That's where it's the most effective.
Hmm.
So a lot of shit has to go wrong for somebody to shoot a dude out in the middle of a field with a fan.
Right.
Um, that's pretty negligent. You're not doing a whole lot of reaping in the timber.
Yeah.
So actually, the people get shot turkey hunting every year, but there's still fewer incidences of people shot reaping than just turkey hunting normally.
Hmm.
Um,
Well,
CSS thing, man, that's a whole nother episode if you want to
oh
get
yeah, yeah. Um, well, man, I think we'll call it good on this one. Some turkey insight for you guys, and HuntStand membership, very affordable. What is it for a year?
HuntStand Pro is $30, and then HuntStand Pro Whitetail, if you're really into deer hunting, is right around 60 to 70. We always have sales, so I'd encourage people to
Yeah,
look out for a sale. I'm sure you probably have a code for your audience, but yeah, man, $30, all 50 states, property information, landowner information, um, multiple different base layers for mapping, multiple different overlays, um, full of features for $30. You really can't go wrong. And I might be biased, but I was just doing some competitive analysis actually this morning, believe it or not.
mm,
And we certainly have a lot more to offer than our number one competitor. And
yeah.
that's just a fact. So anybody who hasn't tried it should check it out.
And I think we'll do this again leading up to whitetail season and kind of go into all those unique features that we have designed specifically to help out the whitetail enthusiasts. But Josh,
And
man, I hope.
Eastern Hunters, man, let me just tease it. We got something big coming out this
Ooh,
summer in collaboration with probably the most respected mule deer biologist of all time, who helped us build something that's going to be real cool. So
sweet.
jump
We
on
just
top.
my Western buddy and I just decided to burn our Colorado mule deer points. So we'll be drawing. I think we each had 7. And or maybe he had 6 and I had 7, but you go in with your lowest common denominator, and so I think we went with 6 points. But it was 100% where we're going. So we're going to Colorado. We're going mule deer hunting because we're getting drawn. So
Hell
yeah,
yeah,
we'll
man.
have to utilize that for this coming. I think we're
Yeah,
going to
you're
be
gonna
going
want
in
to.
November. Yeah. So
Sweet.
right on, man. Well, hey, safe travels this spring, and hope you have a wonderful turkey season.
Likewise, man. Good luck in Tennessee, and I know you'll kill some Rios.
Yeah, absolutely. You too. Take care.
Thanks.